Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into a completely breathless, highly viral piece of audio that's been making the rounds. What we are looking at is this fascinating bit of rhetoric that takes a massively debated topic, Australia's immigration rate, and somehow connects it to this absolutely overwhelming rapid-fire list of taxes and fees. Now, whether you totally agree with the sentiment or completely disagree, honestly, the way the speaker constructs this argument is literally a masterclass in using sheer volume to make a point. So we're going to break down exactly how this argument works, using the source material itself, to analyze this massive financial checklist.
Let's kick things off with part 1, the satirical solution.
Okay, let's get right into it. The source starts by bringing up the very loud public conversation about the number of immigrants moving to Australia. But instead of getting into the weeds of border policy or infrastructure like you'd expect, the speaker completely pivots. They drop this highly controversial but rhetorically brilliant premise right out of the gate. I have the perfect solution. Tell them about the taxes. Staying totally neutral here, it is just fascinating to watch how the speaker wields the sheer weight of the country's tax system as this theoretical deterrent. It's a satirical hook, right? It's perfectly designed to grab you before the absolute avalanche of information comes your way.
And to make that impact really hit hard, the speaker launches straight into a rapid-fire list, starting with the most obvious target out there: income tax. Instantly, they stack on capital gains tax. The barrage kicks off with the super standard, well-known financial obligations that pretty much everyone listening recognizes and, well, likely pays. And then boom, payroll tax. It seems simple enough at first, right? But the pace accelerates so fast. The goal here isn't to give you some nuanced accounting lesson, not at all. It's to completely overwhelm you with volume from the very first second.
Which brings us to the next phase, part 2, taxing wealth and work.
Let's try to put some structure to this chaotic list. We can basically group these initial heavy hitters the speaker just rattled off. On the earnings side of things, we've got income tax, payroll tax, fringe benefits tax, and superannuation tax. You know, the costs directly tied to working and employing people. Then flip over to the owning side: capital gains tax, stamp duty, land tax, and council rates. By grouping the major taxes on labor and property, the speaker lays down this incredibly heavy foundation. These are the big-ticket items, the stuff citizens are deeply familiar with, which basically builds a baseline of agreement before things get much more specific.
From there, we move into part 3, the cost of consumption. The escalation here is just brilliant. The rant broadens out from what you earn and what you own to what you actually use every single day. Think about the specific items pulled from the source here. You've got excises on fuel, tobacco, and alcohol. Then there's transportation costs, the luxury car tax, motor vehicle registration, congestion charges. But the real psychological trick, it's right there at the end, mentioning a soon inheritance tax and maybe a sugar tax. By slipping these hypothetical future taxes into a list of real current ones, the speaker is intentionally cranking up the anxiety, making the present situation feel even more precarious than it already is.
And that escalation drops us right into part 4, levies on lifestyle.
Now the argument starts creeping into your daily experience, mapping out the literal costs of simply existing and moving around the country. Notice the specific civic, travel, and environmental levies they use here. We're talking the Medicare levy, fire services, waste management, and gambling taxes. But the absolute standout, mentioning the passenger movement charge specifically as a fee just to leave the country. It is such a punchy detail. It paints this incredibly vivid picture of an inescapable bureaucratic burden. The framing basically says, you're taxed to live here, and ironically, you're even taxed to leave.
Moving right along to part 5, fees, fines, and surcharges.
Just notice how this builds. The psychological intensity of this rant peaks right here when we hit these hyper-specific, everyday microtransactions. We are way past federal income tax now. We're drilling down into totally mundane stuff: dog registration, a boat license, a fishing license, weekend surcharges, public holiday surcharges, and electronic transfer fees. By dragging the argument all the way down to the level of walking your dog or tapping your phone to transfer money, the whole thing suddenly feels deeply personal and, quite frankly, suffocating. The speaker also deliberately blurs the lines to maximize the punch. They strategically blend government penalties, like Australian Taxation Office penalties and interest on ATO debt, with private market-based housing expenses, like rental application background check fees and body corporate fees. Now sure, an economist would jump in and say a body corporate fee definitely isn't a government tax, but in the middle of this lightning-fast rant, it genuinely doesn't matter. Blending these categories together completely maximizes that feeling of a total, inescapable financial drain coming at you from every possible direction.
And the execution is everything. Over 35. In one single, uninterrupted, incredibly fast-paced breath, the speaker rattles off over 35 unique charges, levies, taxes, and fees. They are literally using raw volume as a rhetorical weapon. You aren't supposed to stop and analyze each one. You're just supposed to feel the sheer crushing weight of that number, 35, pressing down on you.
Which leads us straight to the conclusion in Part 6, the final toll.
This is the ultimate punchline of this entire satirical breakdown. The rant wraps up by highlighting this crazy cyclical trap, which breaks down into 3 distinct steps. Step 1, you earn the money. Step 2, you somehow survive that massive gauntlet of 30-plus fees, levies, and income taxes we just went through. And Step 3, the kicker. You pay GST, the goods and services tax, all over again on literally anything you buy with the leftover cash. It perfectly illustrates a system where the taxation doesn't just stop when your paycheck clears, it follows you right to the cash register.
The speaker delivers this final blow with absolute raw candor, saying you pay GST again on everything you buy with the money that's already been fucked up. It's incredibly emotional phrasing, but it perfectly sums up the source's frustration. It captures that feeling of being caught in an inescapable loop, acting as this massive, dramatic climax to the entire rapid-fire list we've been unpacking.
And this explainer leaves us exactly where the source material wrapped up. The speaker poses this final, highly provocative question. You still want to stay? It is just a brilliant way to tie that overwhelming, suffocating tax burden we just mapped out directly back to that initial hook about the immigration debate. It's a completely fascinating piece of structural rhetoric, taking a very domestic financial grievance and weaponizing it to make a satirical point about international borders. So looking at all of that, do you still want to stay?